Good morning to everyone. Thank you all very much for being out here with us today. I am Wayne Tuckson. I have the pleasure of being the moderator for our sessions. The program today is being hosted by the West Dallas Multipurpose Center, which all of you probably know, and those of us from HEAL are learning very quickly, is a hub for programs and services that meet community expectations and needs for all residents of the city of Dallas, but most especially for those who live and or work in the West Dallas portion. Collaborators for this program include the City of Dallas Office of Community Care, HEAL Collaborative, and you'll be hearing more about that in a little bit, and Amgen, the leading worldwide pioneer in biotechnology. Today's program is really going to talk about ensuring access to treatment and advances in the treatment and diagnosis of small cell lung cancer. Because we know doing this, we can ensure that hope is possible with early diagnosis, treatment, and support to both cure and improving quality of life for people with small cell lung cancer. To get things started, I'd like to bring up Mr. Stan Watson, former representative in the state of Georgia, Stan Watson. He's the National Director of Faith-Based Initiatives of the HEAL Collaborative. Stan, come on up, please, if you would, sir.
Good morning. Y'all got to say good morning back. Good morning. All right, well, thank you so very much for being here this morning. I'm Stan Watson. On behalf of HEAL's Board of Directors and our staff, we'd like to welcome you here to the center today for this innovative experience that we're going to share with you today. On behalf of our board of directors again and our staff and our sponsor Amgen, we're glad that you came today. We hope to deposit a great wealth of information in your hearts and your souls. And since you're going to be a depositor today, you can't hold it because you can't just be the custodian. You got to take this information back to your homes and share it with your family. You got to take it to your organization, to your community, and make sure we use it for the betterment for our caregivers, for our physicians, and for yourselves as well. So on behalf again of HEAL and our sponsor Amgen, thank you so very much for being here. I'm going to bring back our innovative, energetic enforcer from the state of Kentucky that's going to keep us on track, keep us on time. Give it up for our moderator, Mr. Wayne Tuckson.
Thank you very much. I want to clarify something. Now, I'm a colon and rectal surgeon by training, so when someone talks about depositing, I'm thinking something else, So we don't want none of that other stuff being deposited around here today. I want to remind everyone, in the programs there are pre-surveys. If you would be so kind as to fill those out, give us your opinion now. At the conclusion of the program, we're going to go back and ask you to fill out the post-program survey. Again, this is very valuable for us to see how we're doing with our information and lets us know how we're doing as far as future programs on down the road. So please be sure and fill those programs out. I want to also tell you that we're going to have a couple of different kinds of sessions going on, but we're going to ask you to hold your questions until the end. That may be a little hard, but everyone's got pens, everyone's got paper. So when we bring up our various speakers, I want you to at least write down some things that you may have for questions, and so that you can ask at the end of the formal portion of the program. We'll have a Q&A. And if you don't ask us questions, you remember how you were in school, and if you didn't ask the teacher a question, what'd they do? They asked you questions, and I promise you, we will ask you some questions about things. So before we get started, I want to bring up Ms. Ashley Hutto, who is the West Dallas Multipurpose Center Manager. Is it Hutto?
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, I did teach junior high for almost 10 years, so for a long time I thought my name was Miss. So you did a great job. I want to welcome everybody to the West Dallas Multipurpose Center. We are thrilled to be able to host this opportunity for our community. It's a great resource, it's a great source of information, and it's something that's particularly important to us in West Dallas, especially given some of the environmental pollution that we have in our community and some of the air quality issues that we experience in our community. In addition to that, we do know from the data that we have a very high prevalence of undiagnosed conditions. And so it's going to be really important for you to be able to absorb the information and take it back to your friends and neighbors to help them also have the information that they need so that they can stay healthy. The West Dallas Multipurpose Center is one of 2 community centers that is operated by the City of Dallas. We are managed by the Office of Community Care, so we're a little bit different from like a rec center or other community centers, insofar as we have a little more of a social service tone to the work that we do in the community. And that's why it made such great sense for us to collaborate with the HEAL Collaborative to provide you with this information and this opportunity to learn more about the importance of lung health and what you can do when you have issues. So I'd like to welcome you. I'm thrilled to have you here. A couple of quick things. The restrooms are over here. We have coffee and water over here if you need any refreshments. And after that, I'm going to let y'all get started with the program. Thank you so much. Oh, you want it on? Yes. Yeah, it's our doorbell.
Oh, okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I have to tell you, we have been to many, many places, and this is probably one of the finest venues which we have been. So I compliment Ashley and the folks here on having a wonderful, wonderful place. Before we get into formal discussion about small cell lung cancer, it's sometimes, we all know, who do we let, I think you'll hear it from Dr. Flano and Cassandra and the folks later on, and me as a physician. I may say something, but people really don't pay a whole lot of attention. But if a family member or a neighbor or somebody that they trust talks to them, people tend to pay a whole lot more attention. In fact, might even go there originally to seek out some advice. So we like to start things off with what's called a fireside chat. And what that basically is just a little conversation, between a couple of folks who are patients who have lived the experience, and in this case, someone who is directing a lot of work and trying to help people along with that program through small cell lung cancer as far as treatment is concerned. Our moderator for the fireside chat is Ms. Lisa Giroyu. She is the Global Advocacy Relations Director in Thoracic and Gastrointestinal Cancers with Amgen. Lisa, why don't you come on up and have a seat here. Also, we have Ms. Montessa Lee, who's a small cell lung cancer patient and a strong advocate for people with small cell lung cancer. Montessa. And joining us by Zoom, we have Ms. Lalisha Payne. She also is a small cell lung cancer patient. Lisa, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Tuxson. Well, he's done the first part of what I thought I was going to have to do, which was to do an introduction. I'll give you a brief, as in 2-second synopsis of what my role is at Amgen. My work is the good part of what pharmaceutical companies do. We find nonprofits who are doing incredible work, especially in the community, and provide financial support for that work so that you can get the educational resources you need, you can get help with care navigation, and you can get other programming as well. So I want to, before we begin, say a special thank you to HEAL Collaborative for putting on an incredible program, as well as to the Community Center for allowing us to be here with you all today. Thank you. And so Dr. Tuxson started off by telling you who our panelists are today. I just want to go a little bit deeper with each of them. Montessa Lee, you would not know her background by looking at her, but she is an educator, she is an author, and she is a lung cancer advocate. And her book, He Breathed Life, is a story of transformation and hope. And then joining us via Zoom, I guess in a minute, is Lalisha Payne. Lalisha is a retired social worker who lives in Chicago, Illinois. She has a background in sociology and criminal justice, and she is an engaged social activist as well as a founder of a cancer support group in her community. Please join me in welcoming them both to the stage. So for today's discussion, we're going to cover a few topics. We're going to go through the diagnosis journey that they both had to find out that they're small cell lung cancer patients, but also we're going to talk about the relationships they had with their healthcare team. We'll talk about the role that bias played in their treatment journey, if any, and we'll talk about the importance of advocacy before we close out our conversation. And so, Montessa, I'd love to start our conversation with you. Can you talk to us a little bit about what was going on in your life that led you to go to the doctors? What symptoms were you experiencing?
Oh, yep. And thanks, Lisa. Like you said, my background being education, I remember parking in the parking lot to my school and walking in and I couldn't breathe. I thought I had developed asthma. I was like, and I was like, wow, something's wrong. Then I had stabbing chest pain that wouldn't go away. So I ended up going, to a urgent care doctor. They misdiagnosed me. I went to another urgent care doctor. They misdiagnosed me before a third visit to the ER would finally reveal a tumor in my lung.
And you were really young when you were going through this, correct?
Right, it was 2006 and I was 28 years old.
Oftentimes, when we hear that someone has lung cancer, we think, oh, it's somebody who's lived a long life and had risk factors that you'll hear about later, but that's not always the case. And so, a big part of Montessa's story is bringing to life that at any age, you are at risk for developing a lung cancer. In addition, Montessa, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your experience with those misdiagnoses and ultimately getting to an accurate diagnosis.
Sure. So the first time I went, they said, oh, I had been working out that summer. It was a summer break, and they said, oh, you have inflammation around the rib cage, osteochondritis. I said, oh, that sounds, reasonable. Next time I went back and they said, oh, you have bronchitis. And I said, here I am working with 6 kids all the time. I've never had bronchitis. It sounds reasonable. Went home and somebody explained it to me later. They said, if we go into this room right now, you're going to sit in that chair and you trust that the chair is going to hold you up. And so in a level of, I'm trusting and not thinking anything else. I'm not a health care practitioner. Didn't know I was supposed to have an x-ray for them to diagnose me with bronchitis. So I'm just trusting and going on with the diagnosis and all the while not realizing how sick I was.
So you find out you have lung cancer, small cell lung cancer. Can you tell the audience what was going through your mind at that time?
Sure. And I had a very good oncologist because I will never forget my extended family. My cousin took me to the doctor the day I would find out what the true diagnosis was after even having 2 biopsies. And he said, it's really a dumb name. He said, stupid name. He said, they used to call it oat cell cancer because when you look at it in the microscope, it looked like oats. And my cousin and I laughed, said, that is a dumb name. Until I went home and found Google Doctor and realized, that the prognosis rates weren't good and that even for small cell was even more dismal than non-small cell. And became very angered by the rates of funding and the treatment and that the needle hadn't moved much even then for research and progression.
And Lalisha, I'd like to bring you into the conversation as well. Okay. Oh, okay, yeah, she's here. Thanks. Lalisha, I'd love for you to tell us, in your case, what the symptoms were that you were experiencing to lead you in to get your diagnosis. Hear us okay?
Yes, but I didn't hear your question.
Yeah, I'll repeat it for you, no worries. I was just asking for you to share with us what symptoms you were experiencing that ultimately led you to the doctors to find out about your diagnosis.
Sure, and one question, can you see me okay?
Yeah, we can see you just fine, and we can hear you too.
Okay, thank you very much. I was experiencing gastrointestinal symptoms. I had been diagnosed with a rare liver disease in 2012. So when I started to have pain in the area of my stomach, I felt like that at that time maybe my liver enzymes had went high. Um, when I experienced these symptoms, I immediately went to the emergency room where they conducted a CT scan. And after the CT scan, they informed me that they had saw a nodule on in my left lung on the lower side, and they felt that this nodule was suspicious.
And when you heard this nodule was suspicious, what was going through your mind at that time as well?
Um, what was going through my mind at that time was that 6 months prior to, I had also had a CAT scan, and I was told that everything was okay. So I immediately knew that something had changed, and hearing the word suspicious also was an indicator to me that this was something that was not good.
So, thinking about that first conversation, you're hearing both of you that there's something not good. You find out it's lung cancer. Most people, I would say, aren't familiar with lung cancer. They may not know anybody who has lung cancer. So, talk about whether you had any knowledge about lung cancer, and if not, how did you go about educating yourself? Why don't we start with you, Montessa?
Okay, I'm sure. And my grandfather, both of them had lung cancer, but I really had no knowledge of it. So my knowledge came through Google Doctor, the internet.
Lalisha, what about you?
My knowledge was extremely limited as it relates to lung cancer. I had no idea that there was something that was referred to as non-small cell lung cancer, and also something that was referred to as small cell lung cancer. I had been in groups where there was individuals who had lung cancer. These were groups for quitting smoking. But in terms of lung cancer overall, I had very limited knowledge.
And how did you go about educating yourself? Because that's an important thing to do.
One of the first things that I did was that I sit down and had a detailed conversation with my pulmonary doctor, who I had went to for a second opinion at Mayo Clinic. Um, After hearing that I had small cell lung cancer, my first move was to go to the lung cancer library to read as much as I possibly could about small cell lung cancer. I did, after that, I was able to find a group individuals with lung cancer, and I was connected with other patients who were going through the same journey that I was. So that is the resources that I had at that point in time, and the resources that I use in addition to going to a conference and also some community meetings, so I could get more information from oncologists and radiologists regarding my condition.
That's fantastic. What you've shared is that you were very proactive in going to seek out and obtain the information you needed to understand what your diagnosis was, and also what your treatment options might be and how to best navigate your healthcare journey. I want to go back to Montessa. You're an educator, and so from an educational standpoint, I know you understand the importance of being educated, and you teach that for others. Oftentimes when we are sick and we go to Dr. Google, we see crazy things, right? And so you mentioned that you would look things up on Google. How did you balance what you were finding with, searching out and getting the important pieces of information you needed without freaking yourself out?
Right. And I think it goes back to my spiritual faith, hearing like before I got the diagnosis, I said, oh, it's going to be a healing testimony for somebody beyond yourself. Otherwise, my pessimistic mind would have been like, whoa, how am I going to survive? And I remember finding the lung cancer organizations through the Google searches as well. And I was ordering pamphlets and information to my house. I said my extended family, I lived with my cousin at the time, she said, you gotta quit ordering all this stuff. I was getting boxes and boxes of literature for lung cancer. And at that time, unfortunately, because the research hadn't changed much, pretty much the information said the same thing, but you could find hope in those lung cancer organizations.
It's wonderful. The lung cancer organizations provided a great resource to you as you all were navigating your lung cancer diagnoses. Let's talk, I want to get into that, but let's talk before we go there about the healthcare teams that you all were working with as well. It is incredibly important to find a doctor that is right for you, because otherwise your treatment journey can vary significantly. And so from your experience, Montessa, can you talk to us about how you went about finding doctors that were right for you?
Sure, and actually it was a family approach. Again, my extended family, I had a cousin who's an interventional radiologist who worked at the hospital. My aunt worked at the same hospital. She worked on the insurance side, administrative side. And so we called my cousin who's the interventional radiologist, said, what oncologist are we gonna get? And he called one that would be my oncologist and set me up with an appointment right away. Simultaneously, because I was treated at another hospital, the thoracic surgeon also called me and said, hey, I have an oncologist for you. The appointment's set up on such and such date. And I said, oh, I've got one, through my cousin. So it was a family approach.
Trust is incredibly important in the relationship with your healthcare team. Did you feel comfortable being able to ask questions? Did you even know what questions to ask?
I think I did. I tried to voice my question and thought and advocacy to say I don't want this treatment when the brain radiation to the brain came out. It was about 2007 after I had went through my initial treatment. And I was like, is this an option, a choice for me? And basically, even my radiation oncologist, who my cousin knew, everybody was set up, the pulmonologist, everybody set up through that circle of doctors. And they were like, no, yes, I would go get it, And so that was my only time I tried to voice choice. And but other questions, some things you don't know what to ask, like you might have some other side effects. And talking to my family, like, oh, you need to go talk to your doctor and tell them that you have such and such side effect. So that was how I felt.
Mm-hmm. Lalisha, I'd like to come back over to you. The same question. How did you go about finding a healthcare team that was right for you?
Let me say this. My first pulmonary doctor that I saw after they found the nodule was a doctor that I had already been with for approximately 10 years. And it was when I went and got the second opinion at Mayo that I met another pulmonary doctor. This physician immediately let me know that he was very concerned about what was going on with me at that particular time. In addition to that, he was very compassionate. So I was comfortable with my first visit with him. And he also referred me to an oncologist who I was also comfortable with during my first visit. But let me make this also clear. I had questions that I also asked them, because after that first experience, I felt that it was extremely important to me to be able to connect with somebody that was going to provide medical service to me that was going to help me prolong my life.
I can appreciate that, because oftentimes what we see is people go into their doctors, they talk about what's bothering them. The doctor says, here's what you need to do. And you say, okay, and then you walk out. You don't question it. And what Montessa and Lalisha both are sharing with us is that it's important to have a conversation with your doctor. It's important, if you don't understand something, to say, I don't understand that word, or I don't understand what you're saying. Can you say it to me differently? And it's important to trust your gut. If you don't feel right about the doctor that you're seeing, you are empowered to be able to say, this may not be the person for me, and I need to go find somebody else, and not worry about what the doctor thinks, because this is about your health, and sometimes that can be the decision between life and death. So kudos to both of you for making sure that when it came to your doctors, you found the teams that felt right to you. As part of your journey, I know healthcare, especially when it comes to cancer, can involve a lot of different types of treatment options. And as you run out of options, then the conversation turns to clinical trial opportunities. A lot has changed over the years, and so I'd like to start with Montessa, because I know you were diagnosed many years ago, and talk about what, if any, role clinical trials might have played in your experience with lung cancer.
Sure, and in my experience, because I was diagnosed in 2006, like I said, there wasn't much out there. The needle hadn't changed, and there were no clinical trial options at that time. However, I've had this unique opportunity to sit at this table and see the birth and growth of treatment, and I say this, how when I was treated, there was option. Now there's options with an S, and the way that came about is through people participating in clinical trials, especially, people of color and minorities and African Americans. We need people in clinical trials to move the needle.
That's right, representative clinical trials, because medicine doesn't always work the same way for everybody. We are different biologically, and therefore you want to ensure that the made up of all different types of people. Lalisha, coming over to you, can you talk a little bit about your clinical trial experience? Was it an option that was offered to you? And if so, how did that conversation come about?
Initially, it was not the option that was offered to me. Later in my treatment, in a meeting with one of my physicians, I was told that there was a clinical trial and that my oncologist had advocated for me to be a part of this clinical trial. Unfortunately, I was not accepted.
And that's another important point. Clinical trials have eligibility criteria, and sometimes you won't always meet those criteria. But just because you're not able to get into a particular clinical trial, it doesn't mean you should give up. You have to keep pressing on. Let's talk a little bit about your experiences as you went through your healthcare journey with bias, if any. What role did that play in your journey, Montessa?
So first of all, I think my age, number one, that's why they never gave me an x-ray. Non-smoker, that was one of my factors. Young, otherwise healthy person, never gave me an x-ray. Also, I think I was the water talk cooler, around the water cooler talk, because when they would come in, they were like, wow, it's her, the tumor's that big. But so that bias, and then there's a smoking bias where people think, oh, you did this to yourself or something, and so, and a bias with research where I've seen these researchers, when I've done these panels, somebody said, why study small cell? There's more out there for non-small cell, there's more patients impacted. And so for that statement, which I can still remember to this day, was a bias against what we were the little known Cinderella story of the lung cancer world.
And Lalisha, have you experienced bias in your treatment journey?
Yes, I have. I would like to share this also. When I first started going to this clinic, one of the things that I noticed is that there were a significant number of African American women that were seeing the same physician that I was seeing. Being from the South and already experiencing bias and times when I had also experienced discrimination in medical care, myself and my mother, it became a concern for me. After I was told that I had the suspicious nodule, an appointment I had with the physician after that, he began to raise his voice at me. It was not a good scene. I felt belittled. I felt like it was a punishment because of the stigma and attached to smoking cigarettes, and also the fact that I had lung cancer. Um, it was very, very, very disturbing.
Well, I'm sorry you had to experience that. One of the things I have observed, having gotten a chance to speak with both you and Montessa prior to, also even during today's conversation, is it is important to speak up for yourself. It is important to show up for yourself. So I'd love for both of you, before we get ready to close, to talk about self-advocacy and how you got comfortable being able to speak up and show up for yourself.
Sure. So if not you, then who? If not now, then when? And so you have to be able to speak up for yourself, because now, as you see, people are living, and you guys are going to be the voices for patients coming down the road and for the future. And so that there is hope coming down the horizon, and that you could speak out on behalf of others.
Lalisha?
I, at a very early age, because my mother was a civil rights advocate, learned how to advocate for myself. I was taught to speak up for myself, and also to be able to identify when I was being treated unfairly. Lung cancer is a very serious disease that is highly reflected in the African American community. And regardless of the stigma attached to cigarette smoking, I think that we should be aware that menthol cigarettes are advertised more than healthy eating. We can't be afraid to advocate for ourselves. We can't be afraid to speak up against smoking, or poor health care, or lack of resources. And I feel that it's time to reclaim our health, share knowledge, understanding that knowledge is power, and power leads to change.
I love that. That's a word right there. Well, I know that we are coming to a close on our time, so I want to thank both of you, Lalisha and Mike, for sharing your stories about your small cell lung cancer journeys, and for being that beacon of hope and inspiration for others. To the point that Lalisha just made, it is important. Knowledge is power. It is important to speak up and show up for yourself. So thank you both for being here.
Please give another hand for our moderator, Ms. Geroryu, and to our two panelists on there, Ms. Lee and to Ms. Payne. That was great. That was really wonderful. How many of you either themselves have been diagnosed with lung cancer or have a friend or family member has a diagnosis of lung cancer? All right. Yeah, it's a pretty good number. Pretty good number. Your work is cut out for you, Dr. Flano. Our next speaker was named by Atlanta Magazine. I know y'all don't care about that over here in Dallas, but Atlanta has, but anyway, Atlanta nonetheless. They have a football team there. They're not as good as y'all. But anyway, he was named one of the top docs. I'm sorry, is there a discouraging word from this? Anyway, he was named one of the top docs. In fact, he was so good, he was put on the cover of the magazine, Atlanta Magazine, a couple of years back. He is Dr. Eric Flano. He's currently the associate professor and vice chair of the Department of Medicine in Morehouse Medical School of Medicine. He's also chief and director of pulmonary and critical care and interventional pulmonary medicine at the Grady Hospital Morehouse School of Medicine. He will be speaking to us today on lung cancer in Dallas, disparities, prevalence, screening, diagnosis, risk factors, and staging, looking at non-small cell lung cancer versus small cell lung cancer. I give you the pulmonologist par excellence, Dr. Eric Flano.
Yeah, definitely Atlanta.
Yeah, thank you.
Actually, I grew up here in Texas, finished high school in Austin, then went to this wonderful college in College Station.
You're an
Real quick.
Gets
Well,
worse.
I have a big task here today, and my big task is to discuss with you and get you an understanding about what exactly lung cancer is, Is it better with this one? This one better? Test. Okay, good. Give you a general understanding about what exactly lung cancer is and some of the risk factors and why it affects different communities differently. Some of the high-risk communities, especially the African American and Latino communities here in Texas, and our veterans, because I see some of our veterans here, and it's extremely important. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So let me just go ahead and get started. Let's see, this one. There we go. So what exactly is lung cancer? We'll talk about just like any cancer. Okay, so we're going to specifically talk about lung cancer as we go through it, but with any cancer, you start with a normal cell. And for some reason, whether it's a breast cell, uterus cell, colon cell, but for this case, lung, for some reason, there's a change in the genetics of your cells, right? And what it forces them to do is they start to grow abnormally and out of control. So when this genetic change happens, you'll go from one cell, and rapidly you'll go from one cell to 2 cells, and from 2 cells to 4 cells and 8 cells to a big cancer mess that starts taking over other parts of the body, okay? And that's all it is. So specifically, that's what's happening in the lung, okay? And when we start talking, you've heard the 2 different types from the fireside chat. They talked about non-small cell and small cell. So give you a general understanding about the differences and why they're important. So small cell, and some of us doctors are not really good at naming things, right? And so small cell, what you have is a bunch of cells that are really small. Each one of these purple dots, that's a cancer cell. And you can see the size is real small, they're really compact. So if I have a teaspoon of it, I have a whole bunch of cells all in that teaspoon of cancer there. This type spreads extremely fast, it grows fast, and it has a higher link to smoking, okay? So we see this more with smokers, okay? Now the other one, the cells are a lot larger. Each one of the purple dots is a cancer cell. They're a lot larger. It grows a little bit slower. There's more causes to it, and I'll go through some of the other causes, but we weren't good at naming, so we just call that, well, it's non-small cell. So when you hear about the 2 types, that's what the difference is. Our big focus is small cell cancer because it's very aggressive. It's the big killer. But just give you a general idea that when we're talking about the 2, that's the differences there. Well, what we know about the common causes of cancer, the biggest link for it that we know, about 95% of the cases, is smoking, okay? Number 2 in the United States is radon. And how many are familiar with radon or have heard of it a little bit? Okay. So radon, it is a breakdown product of uranium, okay? And it comes out of the soil, right? So where there's a lot of granite, where there's a lot of bedrock, bedrock inside of the ground, it seeps up. It doesn't have an odor. It doesn't have a color. It doesn't have a smell. It's radioactive. It shows up in the houses. Well, I know in Georgia, we have to actually, before we can sell our house, we have to have our house tested for radon, okay? Here, the rate of having positive tests in houses, for those houses that are tested, is about 7%, almost 8%. So maybe 1 in 12 houses have levels of radon in it here in Texas that are higher than what the EPA recommends as safe. Okay. And if you think about where these houses are located, they're not located in the high dollar housing districts there. Okay. They're located near other places where lower income are. Then there's asbestos and pollution. So we've heard of asbestos. If you're up late watching television at night, you'll hear, see the television commercials and say, oh, if you have asbestos or mesothelioma, then you can call us and we'll help you make money. The reality of that is asbestos is a fiber. That they're talking about mesothelioma. If you have mesothelioma, you were probably exposed to asbestos, which is a fiber that is in insulation, in shipyards, in the brake pads, that if you're sanding down brakes, you can get exposed and inhale. However, if you've been exposed to if you've been exposed to asbestos, the number 1 cancer you're likely to get is lung cancer, okay? And then pollution is obvious there, and we're starting to see higher rates of pollution worldwide and starting to see more cancer in non-smokers because of this. Okay. And then chemical factories, and then just lungs. If you have lungs, you're at a risk of getting lung cancer. Okay. For our veterans, and this is important, it actually hits home for me. My dad is a 20-year retired Master Sergeant for the Air Force. When he was in Vietnam, he was exposed to Agent Orange. Okay, accidental exposure. Okay. He developed lung cancer in 2019. Now, he's still with me because we got through the process and whatever else, and we'll talk about some of that. But just know that a lot of these other factors play a role into it. So we do recognize that Agent Orange is a factor with it. We do recognize that those veterans that were exposed to the burn pits, to the oil fires during the most recent conflict we had in the Middle East, those are an increased risk. But we also know that there was a higher rate of smoking in the military. About 32% of active duty were smokers. Okay? The reason is they provided the cigarettes at very low cost, sometimes free. If you're retired, the rate was still high, about 20%. And if you were deployed overseas, the rate was about 50%. So all of these things, when we start talking about veterans, to know these things and have these discussions when you go to the VA or when you go to the hospital and you start discussing, if you've had these exposures, bring them forward so that people know, because it does play a role in your risk factors. But specifically for blacks and Latinos, what's the difference that we have here? When I start talking about the lung cancer disparities, okay, which are these differences between one population versus another population, a lot of times the first thing that comes to people's minds, oh, it's race, and there might be some racism. And no, not so much. There's a lot of factors that play a role in this that we really have to think about, and we just can't put it off to racism. And so we divide it up and think about two things. One is health, and the other is the health care. Okay. So if we take health, we can think about it in the environmental factors that play a role. I talked about some of them. Smoking, where you live, what you're exposed to, what you eat, okay? And then the biology, because everything that you're exposed to, where you live, what you eat, your body reacts different than someone else's body. And different populations' bodies react differently. So that's the health part of it and how we influence that. The other part is health care and what's available to you that the health care can provide to you or that's even near you. And are they meeting the standards that need to be met? Or are we making them meet those standards? So we talk about early detection, I'll talk about screening, and then we talk about the systemic factors. Is screening available? Is diagnosis available? Do they have the treatments available? Are there research studies or clinical trials that I can participate in that are available? So all of these play a role into some of the healthcare disparities. Okay. So specifically, I'll show you how blacks have the highest death rates despite smoking equal amounts as other races. So think about it, a higher rate even though you may smoke the same, which tells you there is something different. Okay? And then blacks and Latinos are less likely to receive screening. They're less likely to be more likely to be diagnosed at a later stage when they do find it, and they have lower treatment rates altogether. Okay, got it. Okay. All right. So I'll start with African Americans. So what you're looking at here, there's a lot of stuff up here, but we'll make it really simple for you. Up here on the top row, we're looking at the estimated new cases of each of the types of cancers in the body we expect to see this year. Okay? And on the bottom, we're looking at the estimated number of deaths from each of those cancers. And this one's for African Americans. Okay? So we take the top for men on this side. Lung cancer is second. It's second to prostate cancer. We expect to see 3 times as much prostate cancer newly diagnosed this year than we expect lung. But now look what happens. What do we expect to see that will kill more? It's lung cancer. Right? So if you're a betting person, you say, wow, there's 3 times as much prostate cancer, that's probably going to kill more. No, it's lung cancer. It jumps up top. And for women, again, breast cancer, number 1, 3 times as much, again, over lung. But then if you look, even though breast cancer is still above, it's barely above. So, right? And so this is for African Americans. If we look for Latinos, here's what we expect to see. So For Latino men, get it here? Okay, so lung cancer is number 3. Again, almost three times as much again. Prostate and colon outrank it. But then look what happens when it comes to what's killing. Lung jumps to the top. So this is telling you something, right? This behaving differently. And for women, breast cancer, 24,000 new cases this year as compared to 5,000 for lung. But then you look again, and now lung jumps up. Still breast is ahead. It has a head start, but it's catching up. So thyroid, uterine, colon, it jumps over them. So this is telling that for these communities, there is something different even about the behavior of lung cancer, right, that is different. Okay, and when I talk about having equal or lower smoking rates than other populations with high risk, I have this information for African Americans, and what I'm going to show you here is I'm going to show you the prevalence rate of smoking, the percentage of smokers, both in African Americans, whites, and Native Americans in comparison. Men, women, men, women, men, women, and then the rates of cancer in the population, African Americans, whites, and Native Americans. And what you can see is for men, smoking rates about 25% African Americans, 23% for men, okay? That's about the same, okay? And for women 18 and 20, that's about the same. But come over and look at the incidence rates. 74 versus 64, 10% difference. A 10-point difference from there. And if you really want to see and drive this point home that different populations, different races are affected differently, let's take the Native Americans, okay? Because with Native Americans, you're looking at 42% smoking rates here in the U.S. But then look, 44% there. So it's not even, there's a big difference. This is to tell you that it's impact different. Now, don't go out and tell the Native Americans and Alaskans to go out and smoke, because it's still not a thing what they do. But we can tell you that this is impacts. This is tell you that there's something different about the communities, about the races, that we need to pay attention to if we're going to get past some of these healthcare disparities. Texas, y'all can smoke. We got out there, we got the airport, we're driving through the neighborhoods, and you see them popping up everywhere. The vape and smoke shops, right? People, you step out of the airport and people are smoking, right? The average rate nationwide is about 15%. You're 13%, okay? So the thing is, what's been happening over the years, especially here in Texas, is it's been increasing, right? Because it's becoming more acceptable, right? And the other thing that's becoming more acceptable that we have to start paying attention to, right, is not just, when I meet a patient, I don't no longer have to just ask, when did you start smoking? How much do you smoke? What do we have to ask? What do you smoke? Right? And it's becoming more and more, right? So here's why this is important, and we got to think about how we've gotten into this place, okay? So when you smoke, it's not, everybody talks about nicotine. Nicotine's not the thing that's causing the cancer, right? It's about the 6,000 other products that are released out of the smoke that get inhaled into the lung that are causing a genetic change that could the cancer to develop. So that's the formaldehyde, that's the methane, that is the arsenic that comes out of the smoke that comes in that causes these changes. It is the nicotine, which is the addictive component that makes you keep going back and smoking again, even though you know it's bad for you, right? It is more addictive than many of the other, if nicotine came out on the market today, the FDA would have a problem with it, right? But it's been involved in history for so long, and there's so much funding behind it, it's kind of given a pass right now. But the only other two things that are more addictive, heroin and cocaine. That's how addictive the nicotine is. But it's tightly regulated. So we know an average cigarette has about 8 milligrams of nicotine in it. Right? So I had a patient, he's a young guy, and I'm asking him, okay, so how much do you, well, he said, doctor, I cut down, right? I'm only smoking about 4 a day. So I asked him, what are you smoking? Okay? He said, 4 Black and Milds. I said, really? You know those small cigars? They have about 100 milligrams of nicotine in them. You know that's equal to almost 12 cigarettes, more than half a pack. So you're a 2-pack-a-day smoker. You think you cut down, you haven't cut down. It's actually a lot. And for the people, you know, you have large cigars, and everybody thinks, we're going to a cigar bar, right? And you're going to smoke a cigar, or, you know, you're watching the football game, whatever else. 200 milligrams. 200 milligrams. That's 25 cigarettes. That's a pack in that one point in time. And the advertisement has been pushed towards some of our population, right? And we see this because if you think about it, these companies know how to market to different populations. If you really want to question about it, why do you think these are called black and mild? Okay. All right. This is the new thing that's come out, right? Right. You have all the pods and the vapes. So we know that a pack of cigarettes is about 20 cigarettes. Get one of the jewel pods, that has enough nicotine in it, the equivalent of 41 cigarettes. The puff bars, in which I really don't like because now they mentholate them so it doesn't cause as much irritation when you start doing it and you'll just keep on doing it. It's about 50 cigarettes. And the Sorin pods, now 90 cigarettes, that much nicotine. And we see people that will go to 2 or 3 of these pods a day. Big old plumes of smoke coming out, right? And all that's doing is getting you addicted, but when the price becomes too much, what do? You go back to the cigarettes. Now, I talked about the advertisements. You know, in poorer communities, the lower income communities, that the rate of advertising for cigarettes is about 10 times as much as if you go to some of the more affluent communities with more money. And if you even think about it, and I did this, I have pictures of another talk that I do. I go to church in the community right near my hospital that I work. It's a little bit underserved from that standpoint. And I stopped at the gas station there. You walk in the gas station and you go up and they have a nice display behind the glass of all the different things you can buy to smoke, right? And there's one sign that says nicotine is addictive. They don't talk about the lung cancer and whatever else. It's a nice display. And then you go to a different community where it's a little bit higher price. There's 3 signs on the door. Walk in. Nicotine's addictive. Tobacco products can cause cancer. You walk in, and it's not a huge, beautiful display. So this has been through the years of the advertising. And, some of these are before my time to ask. But over time, you can see what has happened. They have continued. Now, I'm not that old. Okay, I might be. All right. But through time. And now that times are changing, you're starting to see vaping. There's a whole product advertisements, instructions on how they're going to advertise to younger communities about vaping and getting them in. And they continue to do it and go after specific populations and make it more visible, make it more cool. But it's not really that cool to get cancer. All right. Take these. We've walking by the hookah bars. You guys have seen these coming up everywhere. It's fun. The small groups of people get together. They go sit around the hookah bars. I think it's kind of gross to me, really, because you have the little hookah and the tobaccos, and you pass this thing around and whatever. Look, if somebody hands me a drink and there's a straw in it, I'm looking at it sideways like that was in your mouth. I'm not putting that in my mouth. But here they're passing this around. They're breathing in, breathing out. The smoke's everywhere. You pay for an hour session. Right? You have 5 people. There's all this secondhand smoke around there. You get about 200 puffs of this per session, okay? That's about 100 cigarettes worth within an hour session. You have 5 packs. And for the younger population that think this is nice and this is a, sort of a good social event, that whole thing is going to keep you coming back for the nicotine addiction that you have. And then there's our other friend. Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, I got time.
Back in the 50s, when I was 10 years old, we were inhaling, anybody that lived out here in West Dallas, we were inhaling lead. And it was coming out of those big brown, what do you call those?
The smokestacks and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
And there were a couple of them back here.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody that lived out here, we were inhaling that. We would walk to school and live there, and we didn't know any different,
And all of these things, yes, yeah, all of these things play a role. And when I start talking about the pollution and the environment that you're looking at, when you're speaking with your primary care doctors, you need to bring these up with them so they can start determining what the risk factors are for having not just cancer, but other diseases, other lung diseases, other heart diseases. All these have to come out when you're having these discussions. And for this new thing, back here for this new thing, the cannabis, and I get the whole legalization of marijuana, I get all of this and stuff like that. But what we didn't know a long time ago is, okay, exactly does marijuana lead to lung cancer? But over time we've decided, yes, it does, okay? And if in your life you're a heavy user of marijuana, then you have a 2.1-fold risk of developing lung cancer in your life. So you guys ask, okay, so what is a heavy user? What's the definition of this study? Yeah. 50 times in a lifetime. I didn't say a week, because y'all know some people in a lifetime, right? And we're going to see more of this as time goes on, how this is really impacting and increasing the risk from there. Which brings us to the thing that's, we need to take all this information home and have a good understanding of it so we can figure out how and when and who should get screened. Okay? So screening is important. Our goal with screening is to find it before you have the symptoms. But if you start having these symptoms or you see somebody next to you that has some of these symptoms, they really need to get checked out a little bit more urgently. Because by the time you have symptoms, things are bad. It is that cough that doesn't go away. It is that I've been to the doctor, they treated me for pneumonia in my right lung, and they gave me a bunch of antibiotics. I went back and it was still there, and I still had the cough, and they treated me again, and it's still there. Something else needs to happen to get that treatment there. It's the shortness of breath. If you're coughing up blood, even little streaks of it, don't downplay that. You're losing weight, you have pain in your chest. You heard the stories, right? You feel like you have asthma, but you never had asthma before, and then your chest starts hurting. You need to take that as important. Get that checked out quickly. But the goal for screening is really important. And so this is where you're going to get your anatomy lesson right now. Okay. So screening, our big goal is to find lung cancer before it starts causing problems, right? Before it gets bad. So this little lung cancer here, in the lungs, this is a CAT scan. There's your heart and this grayish stuff with the stuff. These are your lungs, and this little spot, that's a lung cancer. On the edge of your lungs, there's a whole lot of nerve fibers. You ever heard anybody that like hurt their ribs or had a broken rib? They're excruciating in pain, right? So a lot of nerve fibers there, okay? In the airways, a lot of nerve fibers, and that's why you have the cough that'll come and whatever else. But in the middle of the lung, where that little spot is, there's no nerve fibers. So if you have a cancer developing there, it gets a head start. And that's why it's important for us to screen. So we catch it before you start having symptoms. And a CAT scan for the part of screening, which you do once a year, takes about 20 minutes to go in and have it done, can actually detect these. And if you use that, it's better than an X-ray. By about 20%, it decreases your chances of dying of lung cancer. And just by participating in screening, you're going to have 25% less chance of dying of lung cancer, just when we can identify that one little spot before it starts causing problems. Okay? So who should get screened? The criteria right now, if you're between the age of 50 and 80, okay? If you've smoked any time within the past 15 years, and if you have what we call a 20-pack year tobacco use history, or 20-pack year smokers. So what that means, if I smoked 1 pack a day for 20 years, multiply it, that's 20-pack years. I smoked 2 packs a day for 10 years, 20-pack years. If I'm 20 or above, you meet the criteria to get screening. If you know somebody that's done that and they're kind of push them to get screened because it can save lives. Okay. So, oh, well, we're kind of, you might want this actually covered up because there's not good numbers here. Okay. So what's happening with screening here in Texas? It's not very good. Because if they take a look at all the smokers that we know that are high risk and that should be screened, nationwide, the average is about 4.5%. Right? So even such, that means we're still 95.5% of people, we still should be screening as a nation, and we're not doing a very good job. But Texas, you're 1.2%. So people that are high risk that should get screened are not getting screened here. You're worse than Louisiana, Oklahoma. I know it's football season. Y'all are doing worse. And we do have a team in Atlanta. All right. So it's important to get screened because finding lung cancer early can improve the chances of survival. For blacks versus whites, here's the differences here. So this is how, when we look at it, we say, okay, when we find a cancer, what are the stages? Where is it? Is it local? Is it in one spot in the lung? Okay. Is it regional? Did it kind of get to the lymph nodes in the center of the chest, but still in this chest cavity? Or is it distant and has it spread all over the body where you have a less likelihood of being able to get to cure? So if we compare this and at the stage that you're diagnosed, where you are compared to whites and blacks, you can see that blacks are less likely to be diagnosed at a local stage. Okay, whites are more likely. At the regional stage, that's usually where they're finding it. But more than likely to be diagnosed when it's spread to other parts of the body and it's bad. Okay? For Latinos, it gets worse, right? Because you're less likely to have it found at an early stage. You're less likely than whites to have it found at a regional stage. You're more likely to have it found at a distant stage where it's already spread. So it's really important, one, to get the screening if you know you're a candidate for it, and two, if you have those symptoms, to get in and get them checked out because you guys know your body better than us. Okay? And so when we look at the comparisons of here in Texas being found with it at an early stage or at an early diagnosis, okay, less likely to be diagnosed early. And see, the thing about finding it early at an early diagnosis, because if you can find it in one spot, then surgery and taking it out of the body is going to be the best treatment for you, right? But less likely to get curative surgery, okay? And it's about almost 5%, which in an election year, we know that's outside of, what do they say? Outside of the range there. And then the lack of treatment altogether, that they're less likely to get any treatment. No chemotherapy, no radiation, no surgery, anything. Okay? For Latinos, you're going to see the same thing, but the differences get bigger. Comparing from whites to Latinos, the difference gets bigger, right? For early diagnosis, extremely less likely. For surgical treatment, extremely less likely. And look at more likely to not get any treatment. There's almost a 4% difference there, okay? So really important. You have these symptoms, need to get treatment. So now another understanding I need you to know why it's so important. Not only when you find out that there's something there, it's moving forward to get to the point where you can get diagnosed, treated, and get the follow-up in a timely fashion. So we talked about, I'm going to come back to here. When I talked about when you go from 1 cell to 2 cells to 4 cells to 8 cells, that's what we call a doubling time. Okay, think of it differently. If your cancer is the size of a teaspoon worth of cancer cells, it's that time for it to go from 1 teaspoon worth of cancer to 2 to 4 to half a cup, et cetera, okay? Right, so that's what we call the doubling time, is that time. For the non-small cell, right, the slower growing one, that time is about 60 to 90 days, okay? For the more aggressive one, for the small cell, did I pass that one? Did I go too fast? No, I'll come back to it. So we'll take the non-small cell. The non-small cell, right, 90 days. If you can find it early, that gives us time to get surgery, to get the treatment. That's the best one if it's found early. If it's not surgery, then chemotherapy and radiation or a combination thereof will actually be the best treatment for you. Okay. Again, we talked about the curative surgery rates here in Texas. In terms of a national average, you're below the national average for curative surgery. Texas across the board. But the individuals, for blacks, reiterating this point to you, is that you're less likely to get curative surgery, okay? And for Latinos, reiterating this, that they're less likely to get curative surgery at that. So you're even less. Where the average across the board is 16%, you're at 13.7%. So for Latinos, it's even less than what the Texas average is. For this, I have this data for African American men. This is looking at, remember I said, if you catch it early, the best treatment is surgery. And we're looking at who has the opportunity to get surgery for this early cancer and who's actually getting it. And you have white men, white women, black women. Black women, who's not going to the doctor? Men. Yes, almost 65% versus everybody else in the 90%. So again, the reinforcement of getting people to the treatment that they need to get to. Now I'll make the difference of small cell, because remember I said this is the most aggressive one, right? It spreads fast, it grows fast, okay? This time from doubling is 30 days, 1 month. So I want you to think about this. When you have that diagnosis, right, they tell you have small cell lung cancer. When I tell a patient that, I know they're going to tune out. They're only going to hear cancer and everything. But when they have small cell, I say, I need you to refocus here, right? Because we've got to move. We've got 30 days before you have twice as much cancer. And then you have 4 times as much cancer in another 30 days. So we've got to move on this. It is more aggressive. It's so aggressive that we stage this into 2 stages. You either have limited disease where it's in one spot, or you have extensive disease where it might be in multiple spots throughout the body. Okay? And the treatment, because it spreads so fast, surgery is not as good. The standard treatment is either chemotherapy or radiation or a combination of both. It is the most aggressive, and only about 5 to 10% of people, despite treatment, will be alive in 5 years. That's how aggressive it is. Okay? And if you have, at the time of your diagnosis, that late stage, only have about 6 to 12 months, even if you get cancer or treatment. And only 10% of people who get treatment on a regular basis will be disease-free after 2 years. Okay? Now, there are new treatments that come with clinical trials. One is tarlatamab. You'll hear a little bit more about some of these new treatments, but these have opportunities where they rev up your immune system and help your own body fight off some of this cancer. Okay? I know for African Americans, with respect to clinical trials, there's some bad history, right? There's some bad history, and there's a lot of distrust with the medical institution about going clinical trials. But what we've learned out of those clinical studies, that bad history, is how to be safe, right? And how to ensure that people are getting fair, equal treatment. So some of the new treatments, you're not getting a placebo. You're not watching the natural progression while somebody else doesn't, gets treatment for the disease. It's now balanced. You're getting either the standard treatment or you're getting the new treatment. And what that does is, for people that participate in these studies, you may be getting the newer treatment. And it gives an understanding about the different populations if we participate in these studies, so we understand how these treatments are helping our population. And for those people that may not have a lot of insurance or any insurance, you're likely to get some of these newer treatments for free. And it does save lives. But the problem that we have is, over time, African Americans are only participating about 6% of these clinical trials versus 83%. So what does that happen? When they get the results of these trials and they look at what treatments work, they really don't work for us because we're not represented. And we won't know that till we participate in some of these trials. So a few take-home points, and I think this is extremely important, especially as I see our young people here attending with us today, right? This is a study they did in 2022 looking at middle school students and how many of them are using any type of tobacco product, right? We're talking 5%, 5% in girls of any product, 3.8%. It used to be girls were the good ones, the boys were the problem. Now it's flipping around, right? The thing about this is they don't stop. It gets worse when they go to high school. It gets worse when they continue on because their brain is developing, that nicotine becomes part of their brain's develop, and they become dependent upon it right now. And the other thing that we have to remember is, you see the picture there? We can't tell our kids not to do something that what? They see us doing. Okay. I want you to remember the screening criteria, right, because it's important. Okay. All right. And remember, if you have the opportunity for treatment, for newer treatments, for giving an understanding about blacks, about Latinos, and how these treatments play a role in our communities, then take the opportunity to participate in them. Because sometimes it might even be free, and you get some of the better treatments, and it can extend your life. Okay. And with that, I've given you guys a lot of information in a short period of time. Thank you.
I'm going to remind you that at the conclusion of all of our speakers, we're going to have question and answers then. So if you think about a question, please be sure and write it down. So I'm going to come back and ask the question I asked before Dr. Flano spoke. Of those of you who raised your hands and said that you yourself or you knew somebody or family member had lung cancer, what is the next thing you're going to tell somebody that you know to do if you know that they're a smoker or they're at risk of cancer? It's going to get screening, right. You're going to tell them to get screening. So now we have to be proactive about some of the things which we're going to do. Our next speaker is a ball of energy. That's about the best way I can put it. She is Ms. Cassandra Green. Ms. Green has a Master of Science in Leadership Management from Western Governors University, and she's currently on track to get her Doctors of Nursing Practice from Chamberlain University. She is the president of the Houston Chapter of Oncology Nursing Society and is the president of the Oncology Nursing Certificating Corporation. Ms. Green is an oncology certified nurse and is currently an oncology nurse navigator at the Houston Methodist Hospital down there in Houston, where they also have a football. No, they used to have a football team. That's right. They couldn't keep their team like y'all did. Y'all got a team down there? Nah. Almost. Perhaps she's best known, though, for being Sophie's dog mama. Ms. Green's going to give us a talk today about patient navigation. Let me ask you this. How many of you, for two things. Number one, we have several groups around the corner here. Please make sure you visit them. Please go there. There's a lot of good information around here. But let me ask the question. How many of you, if you had to go from here, could go to Parkland Hospital or Southwest Texas Radiology Department? If I said, okay, I want you to go there. How many of you can get there pretty quickly? You guys can? All right, that's pretty good. Well, I couldn't. I'm going to tell you right now, I need help. You know, I turn on my GPS or something like that. And a lot of us need help. And that's where we get something, one of the most wonderful group of people in the world called nurse navigators. And so what we're going to hear about is patient navigation, small cell lung cancer patient navigation, care and support. I give you Ms. Cassandra Green.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. So, like he said, I am an oncology nurse navigator. And let me tell you the fun fact, like an interesting fact, not necessarily a fun fact, but navigation actually started in Harlem, New York by a Black physician who wanted his breast cancer patients. They were falling through the cracks and not completing treatment or continuing treatment, starting treatment. And he had a group of nurses start reaching out to those patients constantly. And that's where navigation began. So oncology started navigation, and we've done it so well that other places are doing other specialties like cardiology and orthopedics are doing navigation now. So what is a navigator? The other arrow? Which one? This one. Oh, down. Sorry. There we go. Sorry. Technical. So an oncology nurse navigator, a lot of you may have not heard of one, but we are like so vital to the oncology team. We are an important role of the team. We are the one constant in that patient's team. I'm going to follow you as soon as you are diagnosed, while you're getting treatment, and up to 5 years after you have completed your treatment. And if you come back again after 5 years, I'm going to pick right back up where we left off and jump right back in where we are. So we're professional oncology specific nurses with clinical knowledge, and we offer individualized assistance to patients, families, and caregivers to help overcome healthcare system barriers. And so barriers, that's anything that's going to keep you from starting, continuing, or completing your cancer care. I need you to do all those things so that you can have the absolute best outcome as possible. A barrier could be transportation, it could be, so we address the barriers to care. It could be transportation, financial issues, psychosocial issues, emotional issues. When I say psychosocial, access to food, access to housing, emotional issues. I'm going to refer you to therapy because cancer is very heavy, right? It's going to affect you physically, mentally, and emotionally. We need to be able to handle all of those components so that you can have the best outcome possible. We provide education resources and referrals. As soon as that doctor calls me and says, Cassandra, this patient has cancer, I need you to get them in to the medical oncologist ASAP. Especially with my small cell. My pulmonologist calls. She says, hey, I just told the patient he's got small cell. I'm calling that patient immediately. I'm calling my scheduler upstairs in my medical oncology office, and I'm like, this patient has small cell. We need to see today. We need to see in the next 3 days. And I'm calling that patient, and I'm like, I'm your navigator. I'm going to be the person. The main thing I tell the patient, which really helps, is that I'm your single source of contact. You don't have to call medical oncology, radiation oncology, your surgical oncologist. Whatever questions you have, you just reach out to me and I'm going to answer your questions because I've been doing this a while. 95% of the time, I already know the answer, and it saves you from having to make a bunch of phone calls. Because as a patient, there's nothing more frustrating to call one office and they say that, well, that's not us. You need to call the next person's office, or you need to call that office, and you spend all your time on there. So I'm answering your question for you. I'm also saying, this is what our next steps. You're going to come see my medical oncologist. He's going to order a PET scan. He's going to probably, if you haven't had a biopsy, he's going to order a biopsy. He's going to do some genetic testing. We're going to do some genomic profiling because we need to see if it's targetable. And I let the patient know then that when we're looking for a targeted agent, that treatment is not, okay, here's your treatment, we need to start immediately. A lot of times we're looking for something targetable, and that could take a few weeks for us to get that back, but that's so that you can get the medication that is specific to your cancer. With small cell, we want to start quickly. We don't really have a lot of genetic profiling, but we do try to let patients know. I want them to know upfront everything, what to expect. And when patients call me and they say, hey, I thought you said I was going to have a PET scan, no one's reached out, it's been 2 days. Oh, let me get on the phone. I'll take care of that for you. Don't worry about it. And it gets taken care of. So we also educate on prevention and coordinate screenings. So like I've mentioned before, I am working on my doctorate. And so my project right now is on screenings. And my project right now is on lung cancer screenings because just like the state of Texas, my campus has a huge practice gap. Almost 96 of our patients that are eligible for lung cancer screening are not screened. Anyway, I work for a major healthcare system, and so that is on my campus. We have 7 hospitals, so every hospital was in the 90s. I am now working on a project where I'm calling patients who are coming in for their annual visit and reviewing their records and saying, hey, you know, you're a smoker, you have all of these factors, you're eligible for lung cancer screening. You need to ask the physician when you see them tomorrow to order lung cancer screening for you. So I'm trying to improve those rates through screening. So we promote screening and we promote prevention. We assist with educating on the diagnosis. I'm going to meet you as soon as you come in and see that doctor. That's the first time we're going to meet face to face. I have a whole cancer binder for you with information about your cancer, with information about support groups, with information about food banks, transportation issues, options, and ways to reach me and every single person on your team. I put everybody's phone number to their office on that sheet so that the patient can have everything in one binder, because patients get papers from every doctor. I say, you know what you do? You poke holes in it and you put it in your binder. I also tell them that we live on the Texas Gulf Coast in Houston, and if you evacuate, you take your binder with you. You go on vacation, your binder goes with you, because everything in that binder is going to even include your treatment plan. And so if you go out of town and you get sick, your treatment plan is with you. They ask you what medicines you receive. I can't pronounce some of those drugs, and I'm a certified oncology nurse. I don't expect the patients to. So if you have that binder with all that information, you'll have that for your physician. I also, like I said, coordinate our care. Survivorship. The definition of survivorship in cancer is the moment you are diagnosed, you are a survivor. A lot of patients think it's after treatment is completed. That is not correct. As soon as you are diagnosed, you are surviving cancer. And so we're looking for ways to help you through survivorship. What do you need to get through this journey? How can I help you after the journey? So once you're done, you come in and you're getting all your chemotherapy and all your treatment, and you're coming and getting radiation, and you do this for 6 to 8 months, almost a year sometimes of your time. It's like a job. And then all of a sudden, the medical oncologist says, okay, you're done. I don't need to see you for 3 months. And you're like, oh, wow, what do I do? Where's all my time? What am I going to do with all this time? I don't know what to do. That's where I'm there to help bridge that gap. Like, let's continue some support. If you continue to have questions, hey, Cassandra, when am I due for my next scan? I know I should have a scan, but it's not ordered. I don't see it in my chart. I'm taking care of that. I'm reaching out and saying, hey, it's been a month. How do you feel? Do you feel like we just threw you out there in the world? Because you're not being just thrown out the world. But a lot of patients feel like that. We're done, we're washing our hands, and we're just kind of throwing the baby bird out the nest, and okay, here we go. But that's why I'm there to help bridge that gap and make sure that you are following up and doing all of your follow-up imaging, follow-up lab work, making sure that it's getting done. So we help facilitate shared decision making. Part of lung cancer screening is that you have to have what they call a shared decision making visit, which means the doctor needs to talk to you about lung cancer screening, the benefits of it, why you should stop smoking if you're still smoking. By me reaching out to the patient ahead of time, I've done that visit for them, and it's documented in their chart. Promote advanced care planning. If you come to me, unfortunately, with small cell and it's extensive disease, I need to discuss with you. Have you thought about what we want to do? Have you thought about, I stress the importance of having an advance directive and having a medical power of attorney, especially if you have extended family or you've remarried, because I've seen too many instances where stepchildren and new spouses or things like that come in, and it's not good for the patient, because we want to know what the patient wants. And while you're still in your power to do so, let's make those decisions early so that we have those for later on. We support palliative and hospice care. I think palliative care gets a bad rap. Palliative care is there to help keep you out of the hospital and help manage your symptoms. They work with me, they work with my team to make sure that we're addressing everything that the patient needs. And a lot of times people hear palliative care and they're like, no, I'm not ready for that yet. You can benefit from palliative care day one. Okay, hospice is when we're getting close to the end. Palliative care is to help keep you out of the hospital and keep you on your treatment as long as possible. And people seem to interchange those, and it's not, they're not really interchangeable. I have a wonderful palliative care team who comes in rounds every single day in our infusion suite to see our patients. And our patients ask for some of the palliative care people. They're like, oh, I want to discuss when it's time to transition. I want to discuss these things. And palliative care is to help facilitate those conversations as well. And palliative care also says, Cassandra, I don't know if Mr. So-and-so told you, but he's having nausea every day, this, and this, and he didn't tell the doctor. And then I'm going to reach out and say, hey, have you tried everything? My doctor's only going to want to give medicine. And me as the navigator, I'm like, well, let's try some ginger. Let's try some aromatherapy. Let's try pressure point therapy. Let's do this, because I find that with my cancer patients, they're taking like 500 pills and they don't want to take 501 if they don't have to. So if we can try something different, then I'm going to say, hey, let's try this. And if that's not working, then we can ask Dr. So-and-so for another medication, because the patient will be like, I don't want to take I'm so nauseous, I can't even take the pill. I get that a lot too. So let's try some aromatherapy. Let's try sucking on some ginger candy and see if that helps, so that maybe you can get the pill down. So those are the kind of things. We're helping with the end of life conversations. Unfortunately, just recently, I had a very young man in his 30s who was also a fellow nurse. He worked with us, and we had been treating him for 2 years, and it was getting close to the end. And he told me and everyone on my team, I'm ready. but his mother was not. And I had to have a conversation with her almost 5 days a week for like 8 weeks before she finally agreed and told him that it was okay. And he kept saying, I'm ready, but my mom is not going to let this happen. So I have to keep fighting for her. And I felt so bad for him because even though he was a young man, I could see the toll it was taking on him. But it took a lot of coaching, a lot of listening to what the mother said. I understand, it was her only child, it was her only son, not her only child, but her only son, and it was very hard for her. And just having those daily conversations, just saying, think about it, think about it. And when she finally gave her blessing, he passed the next day. He was just waiting for her to be okay with it. And so helping to facilitate those end of life conversations, they don't always happen. Like, I had this conversation with you one time and we're good. That took like 8 weeks of me talking to her every single day, palliative care talking to her every single day, trying to help her understand, what was going on. So, and then we provide ongoing support even after treatment has completed. That's what I've mentioned before. One of the things I want to say that we really do as nurse navigators is we are advocates for our patients. I do not work for the physician. I work for the hospital. And I work for the hospital because I'm there to represent the patient. So I tell patients that, I am here for you. I don't work for any of the doctors in this office. I'm hired by the hospital to work for you. Whatever you feel is best for you, I'm here to champion for. And sometimes that goes against what the doctor wants, but I have to make sure that I'm relaying what the patient wants. And one of the things I always tell my patients to keep in mind when we're going through these conversations is keep in mind your quality of life, because your quality of life is very different than my version of quality of life, than your husband's, or even the doctor's version of quality of life. So when you're choosing a treatment plan, make sure that it's something that you really want to do. And I've had patients tell me before, like, I don't know if I really want to do that. And I always tell them, if you don't want to say anything, I'll say something. Because at the end of the day, yes, the physician's going to get mad at me, but in 15 minutes, he's going to ask me to help him with another patient. So he gets over it pretty quickly. So you want to make sure that you listen to all your options and make the best decision for you. I will always promote treatment, always encourage treatment. But at the same time, I try to be respectful of the patient's decision when they choose to go different directions. And I say, I really wouldn't advise that, but I understand. We're all adults here. So advocacy is one of the huge things that navigation does. If you don't have a navigator in your hospital, in your clinic, there are organizations like some of your healthcare insurance plans have navigators for you that can help you. They're just not going to be there on that one-on-one basis for you to talk to you in person. I do all my visits in person. I'm not virtual. There are some hospitals that have navigators that only work from home and patients never see them. I don't see the benefit in that. The purpose of navigation is to provide personalized care and individualized care to that patient. I don't know how you can do that without being face to face, but some places do it and they do it well. So, I give my hats off to them. What you want is to have someone on your team that is going to fight for you, whatever it may be. Everybody who has cancer has a caregiver of some sort. Believe it or not, that caregiver is a navigator, because they're the ones calling. They're the ones saying this, that, my family member's having this issue. I need this addressed. My family member's having that issue. It's not addressed. So we're all navigators in some type of way, but there is benefit in getting some guidance, because you don't know what to expect when you get that cancer diagnosis, right? You don't know what. I hear it. What do I do now? That's when the navigator steps in and says, hey, I'm going to make your appointments for you. I'm going to get you scheduled, what works for you. I'm going to have my team reach out to you, because I'm not going to make any of your appointments. Your schedule is your schedule, and I'm not going to ask you to change it. But I'm going to have my medical oncology, radiation oncology, and surgical oncology offices reach out to you to get you scheduled as soon as possible. And I reach out to them and I'm like, did you make the appointment? And they're like, yes, Cassandra, you keep asking. Yes, I make these appointments. But I need to make sure that we're getting that patient in and we're getting them tended to get treatment started as soon as possible. So thank you.
So how many of you used to think that the physician was the leader of the healthcare team? And I can tell you from personal experience, one of the most valuable people on the team is someone who is a navigator. How many of you get information off of the web or go online to get information? Okay, that's good. How many of you take what your physician or your healthcare provider says to you? Everything. You know, it is sometimes, yeah, sometimes. I mean, it's a good thing. I mean, that's a very good point. Next thing, how many of you have a primary care provider? Keep your hands up. How many of you who have a primary care provider, they recommended that you have screening for lung cancer? Keep your hands up. Oh, many hands went down. All right, just one hand up, two hands. Your work is cut out for you, Ms. Wilmore. Our next speaker is Ms. Kelly Wilmore. Ms. Wilmore earned her BS in kinesiology and exercise physiology from the University of Houston, then a master's in public health and behavior and community health from the University of North Texas Health Science Center. She is a recipient of the Profiles in Leadership Award, which was given at the 57th Annual Women's Symposium at Southern Methodist University. Ms. Wilmore is currently a public health specialist and tobacco control coordinator with the Dallas County Health and Human Services in the Chronic Disease and Prevention Division. She is going to speak to us on one of the more important topics, and that is tobacco use, control, and prevention. Free tobacco, and a subject dear and near to Dr. Fano's heart, vaping prevention programs. Ms. Wilmore, thank you.
Good morning. Is that okay? Okay. Good morning. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and HEAL Collaborative for inviting Dallas County Health and Human Services, and Ashley for hosting us here at the West Dallas Multipurpose Center. Dr. Fano, you did an excellent job in that presentation, and I won't go into some of the numbers and things in Dallas County. It's just fabulous. So as was stated before, I'm in the Chronic Disease Prevention Division, and what we do is try to help people prevent certain health issues and health concerns. So we have diabetes prevention classes. We help people try to prevent and manage high blood pressure. We have cooking classes, and we have a registered dietitian on staff that helps with some of our nutrition programs. But then, as was stated, I'm our tobacco control coordinator. And so we have asthma programs and programs to help people with various lung health issues. And so that's something that's important to, I would say lung health and tobacco control is really important to our health director and Dallas County Health and Human Services. For the last community health needs assessment that we had, and as was already stated, lung cancer is the leading cause of death of all the types of cancer in this area. So that's one of the reasons we're focusing on this. And then also pediatric asthma. There are more cases of that in the southern portion of Dallas County. So I said that to say it's near and dear to our hearts. So I have a table at the back. I'm not going to be up here long. We have a flyer that has all of our programs on it, but two that we're highlighting in the back. We have an asthma home visit program. So for adults or children, we conduct, it's virtual right now, but we do asthma home visits to just educate on what asthma is. We do a home assessment to see is there mold in the home, too much moisture, is someone smoking, and just try to identify what those triggers are. And then if people need various health resources or community resources, we can lead you and guide you in that. And then we have programs that we work a lot with a lot of the high schools and middle schools in the area. Especially this past fall, I was sharing with someone earlier, the laws in Texas changed, and I'm not sure if people are aware of this, but if a student is caught possessing, using, or distributing an e-cigarette, they could get sent to an alternative disciplinary education program. And so our job is to just educate. A lot of people call us and ask us what e-cigarettes are, what's in them. People feel like they're safer, but as you heard earlier, they're not. And so we do presentations for schools. We help people if they're ready to quit smoking. And so there are flyers and information at the back, or any type of tobacco use. As you saw, and we asked now what type, it doesn't matter. We use the American Lung Association's Freedom from Smoking program, and they're not on tobacco for teens. We offer them in English and in Spanish. We have some in person and online and virtual. And then another one of my jobs is to try to help create tobacco-free policy. So you may live in an apartment complex or go in certain buildings that still allow smoking. So we try to find out what the policies are, and if they don't have a no tobacco use policy, we can help them write one and create one so we can have a healthier environment. I'm trying to see if I have missed anything. If someone doesn't want to take one of our group classes, we also refer people to the Texas Tobacco Quit line, and so there's information back there about that as well. And I think that is all. Just you can stop by and see me. I don't know if anyone has any questions, but we have information at the table in the back. Thank you. Thank you.
And as I said, we'll have some more Q&A after this. Right now, we're going to have a call to action. I'm going to bring Ms. Lisa Joroyu back up here again, just to kind of give us a little stimulus. And once she finishes, then we're going to do some Q&A session. So I know some of you may have some questions. I definitely have some questions for our panel, and I have some questions for you all out there also. Lisa, if you would, please. Again, she's from Amgen.
I won't take long because I feel like the call to action came earlier, and it's come with every person who has come up here and spoken today, including our panelists. And so what we want you to take away from today is you have been given information. Knowledge is power. Where you go, how your health journey turns out is really up to you. Take the information you've been given, communicate with your doctor, and take action. That's it.
You gonna be part of the panel? Sure? Okay. Let's get our speakers come on back up here again. Eric, Kelly, Cassandra. All right. So while you guys are coming up here, one of the things we heard, whose fancy thing is this? Is this yours? Stay over here. Oh, you good. These people have so much energy, they got all this feedback going on with them. You see, that's what it is. But let me ask, okay, so we heard about vaping, we heard about holding a cigarette in your hand. Could you all comment, what about these pouches? Dr. Flano, Eric, tell me about that. Are pouches good for us, and what's in these things? Pouches, the little tobacco pouch. Oh, you got one? Not on tobacco. Oh, okay. Thought telling on itself up right here. Now, what you got a pouch of? Oh, that kind of, no, I want a pouch you put in your mouth. That's what I'm talking about. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, that's something new. It's and it's actually, you put it in your mouth. You can kind of chew on it or keep it there. It gives you sort of the rush of nicotine that's there. They're actually starting to see that it's such a high quantity of nicotine that you're getting. Some people were doing 3 or 4 pouches of those a day, which is about 3 or 4 packs a day worth of nicotine. Not the same exposure to all the carcinogens that you get from smoking, but that addiction level is still there. And one of the reports, their hearts are racing all day. They're getting GI symptoms because it's just a strong load, and it's just feeding into that addiction, which later, once that expense catches up, they're going to go right back to smoking.
So what experience do you have with patients who come to you and say, okay, I am now smoking, and I'm going to come back to you on this, but with the oncology nurse thing, in your navigating program, people are smoking, but okay, I want you to stop smoking while you're going to this program. But also you have the family members. So what do you tell them about smoking cessation? And then we're going to come back and let you tell us about what programs are available.
So I ask if you're the only one smoking in the home, because if you're the only one, if your spouse is smoking, then it's going to be harder for you to quit, right? Because that's going to be that constant temptation. So if the spouse is smoking, then I try to encourage both of them to come to tobacco cessation. I recommend oral aids, like there's like nicotine toothpicks to kind of help wean that off. And I encourage them to come to my support group for that as well. And if they're still smoking, the main thing is, do you want to stop smoking? Because if they don't want to stop, I can talk to you about tobacco cessation all day long, but if you don't want to stop, you're not going to stop. I'm talking to a wall, basically. And so I'm going to ask them those kind of questions. And a lot of times I'll say, do you smoke? And the patient will say, yes, I smoke 5 cigarettes a day. And the spouse is behind them like this. And I say, 5 cigarettes a day? Well, you know, maybe 10. And the wife or the husband will be like, so they're usually the one that's going to tell me the truth, really, if they're in the room. So sometimes I try to see if there's somebody with them. I'm like, is your wife or your husband here? Because they'll answer the questions a little more truthfully. And I tell them that. I'm not there to judge.
Before you answer, who here smoked and then stopped smoking? You stopped smoking? Hold on to it. Great. I want to ask, or I'm going to come to you next. So tell me, why did you stop smoking?
Because I was giving them all away to somebody else. I wasn't smoking them.
So you weren't much of a smoker anyway. You just buying them.
I was just buying them.
Oh, you a pusher. Oh, okay. I got you. Okay. What about you, sir? You were a smoker and you stopped smoking.
I stopped for 2 years and I started back 2020.
Why did you stop in the first place?
I was incarcerated.
Okay, that'll do it. So you had forced it when you, all right. Who other than him stopped smoking voluntarily? Yes, sir.
A while back, I stopped for 6 months, and I started back smoking again and still smoking. Okay. I'm trying to quit.
All right, Kelly. These are pretty typical stories that we hear a lot of time. So what are some of the things that we can do when people want to stop smoking to help them along that process?
Absolutely. Can y'all hear me okay? Okay. Well, so one of the things I mentioned before, we have group classes, and there are 8 sessions over, there are 8 sessions over 7 weeks, but we address not only the physical component, as has already been shared, nicotine is addictive, so there's a physical aspect of it, which is why it's difficult to stop, but we also address that as social. Sometimes you might be smoking with other people, and so we address some of your social concerns, but then also the emotional side of it. A lot of people just dealing with life are stressed out. You may have problems and things going on, so we talk about stress management techniques to help you cope with whatever else is going on in life. It's not just the physical aspect of the nicotine. Of course, that's the strongest part. We also make referrals, like I said, to the quit line, because at the county, we don't actually provide some of the nicotine replacement therapy and treatments like the patches or the gum, as Cassandra was mentioning earlier. But all of those components, and each time you try, you're not failing because you started back. That is pretty common. So just keep trying. We're here to support you.
All right. Now, I'm a colon and rectal surgeon. We talk about screening for colon cancer, which means we're going to shove a tube up your rear end. How many of you want to have a tube shoved up your rear end? Not many people. Hard pass on that. But we know, but it's very effective as far as identifying patients with cancer. Is having screening for lung cancer painful, or what actually goes on with that?
That is a question for our physicians. I will say we promote with our hospitals screening. We do work with Parkland Hospital at our health fairs just to promote, as is already shared on the screen, the 20-pack year.
Yes. So no, it's not actually. It is a CAT scan. Like I talked about earlier, it's a CAT scan. You get it once a year. And even though the CAT scan has radiation, it's what we call low-dose CAT scan, a low-dose CT scan. So the amount of radiation you get is small, but they go through the entire lungs and look at that. From the time that you check in, you get changed, you get on the table, they run you through the CAT scanner. It's not the one where you stay there for like an hour or so, whatever. They just run you through, run you out. Now, you should be out in about 30 to 40 minutes. Undressed, on the table, out the table, whatever else. And then the results will go back to your primary care doctor in about a week or so, and they'll call you with the results from that standpoint.
How much does it cost?
So it's it's covered by, if you meet the criteria, it's covered by CMS and Medicaid and Medicare. So it should be covered in most insurance, because it's covered by Medicaid and Medicare, it should be covered by your insurance as well. For those that don't have any of those coverages, sort of underinsured, a lot of hospitals have worked it out. I know at our hospital for uninsured, it's about $90. $90 for once a year, but it gives you a good chance, 25% chance of not dying of lung cancer.
Would you comment about that again for getting it done here in different populations?
Different populations. So if you're, I work in Houston. We have a lot of refineries. I try to get my refinery workers, because of all the exposure to the pollutions they're every day at work. If they want to get lung cancer screening and they're outside of the criteria, we do have a low cost that our facility charges $200 for it. And like Dr. Flanaugh said, it's like 30 minutes from door to out the door to get it done. No IV contrast. One of the things I'm explaining to my patients when I'm calling them for their annual wellness and letting them know that they're eligible is that, hey, you're eligible. It's painless, no IVs, no contrast. You don't have to worry about that. And that I also stress that it's not a one and done, that it needs to be done every year. So so I just try to encourage them as much as possible. And I've actually had some, and our radiologists are phenomenal because they read it the next day, if not the same day. So, and I get those results. I see every single lung cancer screening done on my campus.
Okay, well, we have a question over here. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Could you explain the difference in the IV and the non-IV testing? What's the difference?
So for a lot of times when we do an X-ray or CAT scan, they give contrast through an IV so we can see different parts of the body a little bit more enhanced. For this one, you don't need it. So no needles are needed in it. So, because I have an allergy to needles now. But so you don't need to have any pain.
We call that wimp.
Yeah. But we do have a football team. So there's no need for contrast, nothing. Again, you just go in there, put on the gown, get on the table, they screen, it takes a few minutes, you're out of there in about 30 minutes, you can go on your lunch break once a year.
We are remiss, we did not talk about skull, snuff, dip, and other sorts of things. Do these things give rise to lung cancer, or is it just oral cancer?
It's a little bit complicated. Primarily oral cancer. It's just because that's where the local irritant is. You're not sort of inhaling it. We do know that a lot of the lining from nose, mouth, down to the airways into the lung is very much the same. And so some of the exposures, some of these chemicals do make it. And so the increased risk, you still have an increased risk. If you're using just the snuff or using chewing tobacco, you still have an increased risk of developing lung cancer, but you also have a higher risk of developing tongue, gum, throat, tonsil cancer, yes.
How many of you remember Walter Garrison, the old cowboy? You remember the commercial? Just put a pinch between your cheek and gum. And what did he die from? Oral cancer. Oral cancer. Ate right through. We have another question. Oh, I'm sorry, one question. Yes, sir.
Yes, I got a question. The young kids are smoking more nowadays. So my question is, kids are starting at 7, 8 years old. So how old were they before they're affected, before they start developing these issues?
Specifically for lung cancer, we're seeing it early. I've had 29-year-olds, 34-year-olds with stage 4 lung cancer, which was a little bit concerning because they didn't even meet the criteria to get screened. They didn't have a chance, right? But we knew they had lung cancer. And we saw that in our community, community of patients. I diagnosed about 180 patients a year. We looked at 4 years worth of patients, and we found that 11% of them were underneath the age to get screened, no chance, and 6% were above the age. And so that's why you've seen this criteria change over and over and over again. And then the other problems that come with it. the asthma, the ear infections, the sinuses, all of those exposures kind of play a role from that. And the younger kids, remember, their bodies are still developing, right? So a lot of these problems that they're developing will become chronic from that.
Well, Dr. Flano, you also wrote a paper that pointed out that it used to be that the screening was age 50, but he pointed out in his work, which led to the dropping down to 45 for the age at which we start doing screening for lung cancer in African Americans. So there, I think you raised a real good point. Different groups will respond differently.
Right. Yeah, we found that based on what we were seeing, the patients we were seeing, and we looked at nationwide, and for African Americans, yes, it's about 17% were outside of the screening criteria that they were using at that time, and that was one of the 3 papers that got them to change the criteria and expand it. And I think as more people get screened, especially here in Texas, you're at 1.2%, we're going to start learning more about different populations, because I don't think one size screening fits all people.
Cassandra, when you respond, I want you also to comment, if you would, about taking into account pollutants, because we know that through our African American and Latino neighborhoods, we have the highest concentration of industries. We have these cars going through. We have these factories that someone talked about spewing out all these pollutants. They all have an impact on this lung cancer rate. And are we taking this into account when we're getting screening?
So our screening guidelines does not take the pollutants into account. I would like to see that anybody who has been, I would like to see the guidelines to be more broad, like we have for colorectal screening, age 45 and above, you should get, or breast cancer, 40 and above. It's not a one size fits all, but if you have a smoking history, you should be screened. Because I was just saying recently, I had a patient recently that had a 50-pack year history of smoking, but because they quit over about 20 years ago, they didn't qualify for the lung cancer. They didn't meet the guidelines to get it paid for by insurance, and so they had to pay out of pocket. But I would have liked to seen that happen. Also, and because pollutants do play a major factor, I have these young men, 18, 19 years old, going into these refineries and working, and then they're coming to me at the age of 30 with lung cancer. And they're like, I don't smoke, I don't do any of those things. How did I get lung cancer? What's your exposure every day to what's going on in that refinery? And so I think we need to do more research in that. And also addressing the gentleman's question earlier about more children smoking. I distinctly remember in elementary school how much they pushed not smoking with the Great American Smoke Out and don't smoke. And they're not doing tobacco education in classrooms anymore. They've taken it out of the elementary schools. I think we kind of need to bring that back to let's not smoke. Let's stay away from the vape pens. Let's do these things. You know, they did legislation to get rid of the flavors because they were trying to say that they were marketing it to kids. I think we need to start back in, you know, the elementary, the first grade, kindergarten. I see kindergartners talking about smoking. I've heard them because I have nieces and they were talking about smoking. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? You're 6, what? And they know. We have to give them credit. And so we need to educate them and let them know the dangers of what could happen as well.
Hi, Cassandra. This question is for you. So for the folks that actually do qualify to get lung cancer, I know you said you call them and you just reach out to them and say, hey, you're ready. What kind of feedback are you getting? Are they saying yes? Are they saying no? And if they are, what's the barrier?
So far in my project, I have 10 patients. 7 of them asked for lung cancer screening, and it's been ordered, and I've had 1 patient actually complete their screening. So my Excel spreadsheet is looking really pretty right now. However, I do ask them an additional question because I was just curious, and it's not I'm not tracking the data on that particular sheet because I forgot to add it to my IRB, I'm gonna be completely honest. But 99% of the patients, I've asked all of them, and 99% told me they didn't even know that lung cancer screening existed. Because I said, did you know about lung cancer screening? And they say no. And I said, so when you go see your primary care doctor tomorrow, please ask them for lung cancer screening to order it. And that particular group of physicians there's 6 physicians in there. 3 of them are African American, 2 are Indian, and 1 is Vietnamese. So it's a very diverse group, and so I'm getting a very diverse population of patients. But to just know that almost all of them were smokers, and it's documented in their patient history, and had no clue about lung cancer screening until I called and talked to them about it.
We have a question back here in the back, and if you all haven't been back here to this table, it's interesting, scary. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, my question is about, earlier we had the two women speaking about their experiences and how they've encountered bias in their healthcare journey with treatment. And I'm curious, is there more of national efforts to reduce this bias, some sort of training that doctors have in order to try to cut back and see through when they're doing something that is a bias and therefore affects effective treatment?
Yeah, we've seen more focus on sort of increasing diversity, equity, and hiring of physicians from different communities, and even training, right? Because if you walk in and you see a physician that looks like you, they have a background that's similar to yours, you're more likely to have a relationship with them and have the discussion. There was a lot of training about smoking and how we address people, because there's been a change in how smoking is accepted in communities right now, and we try to say, look, we're not going to blame you, we're not going to shame you. We just want you to get the screening so it will save your life. And then the other thing, the last thing is that, especially in a political, an election year, and try not to get too political, but you need to look at what's happening within inside of your state and what's available within inside of your state. Texas specifically, off of the taxes from tobacco products, each year the state makes $1.7 billion. The state puts in $6 million towards cessation and prevention, which is a small fraction. So it's going in other places. This needs to go into the schools that we hear about, and prevention and stop it. This needs to get into the cessation programs and the education part of it. So when you're looking at that voting ballot.
I will get political. When we talk about healthcare is politics. And you have to look at how are your council, or your mayor, council, state representative, and federal representative, what are they pushing? Because ask yourself, what is the cost if I or a family member of mine gets lung cancer? Now, there's the direct cost of what does it cost to treat, which is astronomical. But the real cost is what is the impact if that person can't work, what's that going to do to the family? Who's going to be there to take care of that person? That costs money. So we're talking about medicine, the cost of health care. Leading cause of bankruptcy in the United States is what? Health care. Health care. You had a question, ma'am.
I do. So I don't have lung cancer, but I went through all this screening and stuff, so I kind of know about the lung screening, and they came back and said it was sarcoidosis of the heart and the lung. So do I still need to continue to do lung screening testings every year in conjunction with the sarcoidosis screening, or just concentrate on one versus the other?
Did you meet the criteria, the smoking criteria for lung cancer screening?
I've never smoked, and
okay.
So
then you would just go with whatever. There's specific set guidelines for the management of sarcoid that they would get, how often you get a scan or breathing test or stuff like that. So you wouldn't worry about that part of it, because they're already going to be getting scans or whatever else based on the recommendations for that disease.
I just want to add to that what Dr. Fillinal said. I have patients that have prostate cancer, colorectal cancer, other cancers, and those my pulmonologist and the medical oncologist are still ordering lung cancer screenings for those patients, because even though we're monitoring those patients, they want to make sure those patients are screened and that they're getting the images. Because maybe if you're colon, we're just focusing on here, right? And if we're taking images of things that are not the lung, and you're not gonna, and truth be known, PET scan, insurance doesn't want to pay for a PET scan more than once a year. So I'm not going to be able to tell if you've got anything else if all I'm getting is abdominal CTs. So so just because you have cancer, I want just people to know that just because you have cancer doesn't mean that you won't qualify for lung cancer screenings. Those patients are still getting lung cancer screenings because they meet the criteria.
We're going to take another question. I want you guys to start thinking about what is the number one take-home message each of you want us to have when we leave here? We have a question.
So my uncle passed away with lung cancer in January. One of the things I noticed is that with the elders, they're extremely stubborn. What can we do as family members to get them to continue care or go to the hospital just to even get screened? Because you say, get screening, have cessation, whatever, stop smoking. They don't. So what can we do to encourage them? Because they are afraid, they know they are ill, they're having the coughing. He had continuous sinus infections, the horrible coughing. But he just was so stubborn, he did not want to go to the hospital as he should. Then so I finally got him to make the appointments. Then it was canceling appointments. What can we do as a community to, I know you can't force people, but what can we do as a community to really help them and encourage them to go and get this stuff done so we can catch it sooner?
Education.
The best, and this, if there's anything that's stuck in your mind from here that you thought was impactful, go back and share it with somebody, right? I mean, because it's something important. We talk about these health disparities and these differences, and the only way we're going to get past those is through health literacy and education, right? Because having this education and acting on it is going to move things forward so actions can come forth. And if you learn something, if you hear something, take it back and take action with it and go with them. Even if you got to drag them, go with them.
Yeah, I call, the doctor will usually reach out and say, you know, Cassandra, this patient has canceled their appointment twice with me, whether it be the primary care doctor or the medical oncologist, whoever. And I call the patient and I just have a lovely conversation with them and I'm just, let them know what my job is. And then I was like, so why? I just would like to know why you don't want to come in. Maybe I can help address those. And a lot of times I can win them over. And I'll even say, I will personally come up there and see you. I will go to your appointment with you if you want me to, if you feel like you want that. And some of them will say, oh, are you sure you don't mind coming? No, I don't. And when they're set in their ways, there's no moving them when they don't want to be moved. But sometimes just me being there and saying, I'm not here to push you one way or the other, but if you agree to go, I will be there and I can help you understand things. And sometimes, majority of the time, like only 70%, they'll be like, yeah, absolutely, I'll come. And they will show up. And sometimes they're like, there's no way. And I'll just explain that, okay, well, I've tried. And I tell the doctor, but I try as hard, you know, just using small talk.
Wait, Kelly, you got the 10,000-foot view, though. You are over the county of Dallas. So you don't have the luxury of just sitting back there going, well, I'm not going to hurt somebody's feeling. How do you get that message about the importance of smoking cessation, and or if you've got a concern, you need to get in to get screened?
So it's the same education. We take requests from the public. All of my other colleagues are out at other events today. And then we go to churches, high schools, elementary schools. So we, based on our community health needs assessment, there are certain zip codes, as you know, we've already talked about West Dallas, that there are certain places that we go to first, but we serve the entire county based on the need. But it's scheduling education presentations. You all can help spread that word. I'm just one person, so I'm grateful that you all are here today. There's 2.6 million people in Dallas County. So we have a lot of work to do, but as is already said, if you all can get that word out too, we need help in doing that.
Well, we're lucky we got you, and all those other people got the lesser people. We got the best one, I know. But can the health department dictate or mandate certain things about smoking and or cessation?
No, we can't, as I shared with others earlier. So whatever city you live in, as was stated earlier, it's important for you to educate yourself on who your politicians are, what's going on with the laws in your area, what you want to have happen. So we can't make up rules that dictate where there's smoking, where there's not smoking. Each city does that on their own. I can educate and tell people what their policy is and ask them if they want that changed. Or your apartment complex, we can't mandate those things. So you all have to be the ones to do that.
We have a question over here.
Yes, I have a question. So what's the chance for like a close member for the family to have cancer if their grandparents or someone had cancer genetically.
Yeah. So if there's strong family histories of lung cancer, especially when there's some of these people were never smokers, right? Then you need to bring that to your primary care doctor and say, hey, look, my mom never smoked, but she had lung cancer, my sister did, and whatever else. And they bring that to them and they start incorporating that to see where you stand in terms of needing screening or not screening. The other thing is that there's strong family histories and they all live in the same neighborhood or same whatever, get your houses tested for radon, right? Because the number 2, and it gets downplayed quite a bit, okay? And again, because Texas has 1.4 million veterans here, right? Going back to your history of what you were exposed to, what type of work you did, getting rid of old weapons, building new ones, burn pits, Agent Orange. You need to bring those forth and let them know that these are other risk factors that I have.
How many veterans we have in the room? Stand up for us, please. Please, thank you all very much. We even want the Navy guys to stand up. Come on, you old Navy boys, you can stand up, stand up. Thank you all very much. All right, thank you. Thank you. We have notice how the Navy was the last ones to get up? Air Force right up, you know.
Okay, I really don't have a question. I just want to share because cancer is dear and near to my heart because I am a breast cancer survivor and I'm a strong believer on education, empowerment, and we have a breast cancer support group here in West Dallas out of Vecinos Unidos. We're Mujeres de Fuerza, Women of Strength, and we have we've grown, and the number one is to bring resources to our women here in West Dallas and educate them so they can be their own advocate and know how important, and those of us that are not members of our group, that they know how important it is to get their mammograms, annual mammograms, to get, because that, you know, it can save your life. Early detection is key. That's just the bottom line on any kind of cancer, you know, and any kind of cancer screening. I unfortunately I lost a brother and a sister one to colon cancer, my brother, and then my sister to breast cancer. We've come a long way, and a lot of our women don't know. One of the things that we find out is the genetic testing. A lot of times the doctors won't tell you that you can have that, you know, that especially if it's in your medical history. It's important that you fill it out and let the physicians know about anyone in your family that's had cancer, because those are key, and they will get you the pre-screening, like the genetic testing. But we're pushing, and you're exactly right. We have to get our legislators at all levels, and we have to push for more screening for especially for our marginalized community, our Black and brown communities, because it seems like funding does not come down to our level. So our group is grassroots here in West Dallas, and we want to bring the best to our group here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That is very important, and it's interesting. But thank you for bringing those up. Yes, ma'am.
So my question is, when you go see your primary care physician for your annual physical, you have maybe 20 minutes. How do you get in the conversation or the part of the conversation to get from, okay, he wants you to get your annual flu shot and your COVID shot, and are you feeling okay? Okay, good. What about have you gotten your pneumonia shot because you're 60 or whatever? And as he's dashing out the door, you're like, wait. I need some screening for lung cancer. What does that conversation look like?
First off, if it's going to a he, you ought to go to a she then, because they may take more time for you. I'm just saying. Okay, go ahead.
You start from the beginning, right? That 20 minutes is your 20 minutes, right? Yep, you're paying it. Exactly, you're paying for it. If you go to the store and they're paying for something and they're going to give you something, or you're going to say something, right? Right? So you're paying for it. You start from the beginning. This is what's important to me. I want to discuss this because I think this needs to be addressed. Yeah.
But on the other hand, let's look at the other side of the coin. Patient comes in and has 3 problems on their list, and you only have 20 minutes to get this thing across. In the current era of the employed physician, that time where we could just sit down, cross our legs, everybody have a cup of coffee and have this warm and wonderful conversation as much as you want to, It just doesn't happen. Now, having said that, I think, let's go back to our navigator thing. Where does the team approach come in to addressing this very issue that Ashley brought up? In terms of, does it have to be the physician that's bringing up, or the primary health provider that's bringing it up? Can it be someone else in the office that's bringing it up? Is there a checklist that we need to say, well, look, you haven't had this screening, this needs to be done? I mean, I think what Dr. Fano is saying is correct, but it ain't gonna happen.
The power of nurses, medical assistant, right? So if you're in the clinic, the person that's coming to take you, 99% of the time, person getting to take you into the office and get your weight and do all your vital signs, and then they're sitting in there and they're charting on you, is the MA, the medical assistant, or the nurse for that clinic. You can, and they can say, you're still on this medication, da da da. Yes, I am. You know, I really want to talk to them about lung cancer screening today. Okay, let me put that in your chart. I'll let him know, let her know when they come in that you want lung cancer screening. That's your opportunity, because the medical assistant or the nurse may spend more time with you than the doctor does. And at the end of the day, us nurses, we're a little vocal with our physicians, and my medical assistants can be too, and say, you know, they'll ask you, is there anything you want to talk about today with the doctor? And they'll ask you, and you could say, yes, I want to talk about lung cancer screening, my colorectal screening, my mammogram, my flu shot. You make that list and let them know when they're asking you, what do you want to talk to the doctor about today? Because they're the ones that can get that started.
Can we also suggest that the other important thing is to bring someone else with you?
Absolutely. I always tell patients, write things down before you go. Because a lot of times when you go to an appointment, you know, especially in my oncology setting, you forget what you want to ask. Bring you a notebook and write all those questions down before you come. And then that way, when you get there, you open it up and you go down your list so that you don't forget what you want.
I know that there are more questions that folks would like to ask, but we're going to have to wrap things up, unfortunately. But we will be around for a little while longer, so please ask. Please make sure you talk to Lisa about programs available with Amgen. Talk to the folks at the HEAL Collaborative, which seems every time I look over there, the desk keeps changing in terms of personnel. So I guess you can, I love it. But please, we'll be here for a little bit longer, but please ask. So let's wrap things up. I want that one take-home point. So let's go where who started us off on this in the first place. Contestant, please.
Oh, sure. One takeaway is that there is hope, and also, you know, be your own self-advocate. If you feel something's not right, push for it. Definitely get screening if you meet the criteria. If you don't and something feels right, just say, hey, I need a CT scan or more because something's not right.
I don't know how many of y'all saw the Philadelphia story starring Denzel and Tom Hanks, but Denzel had a wonderful line in there where he said, explain this to me like I'm a 6-year-old. And if your healthcare provider can't explain whatever it is to you within 5 minutes and you can understand it, go see somebody else. Because we should be able to provide that answer. And if you're not satisfied, get another opinion. There are a whole bunch of doctors out here in this world. All right. Kelly, go ahead. Give me the take-home point.
So there are a lot of resources available, but most of the time people do not know about them. So you can call the health department. Even if we don't have it specifically, we can guide you to where that resource is. So stop by our table, we can see. Oh, yes.
Y'all have a full-time representative here at West Dallas that's here Monday through Thursday from 9 in the morning to 5 at night that can help you navigate health department services too.
Absolutely.
All right. Dr. Flindo, Eric.
I'd say the whole process of making a difference is not just focusing on those that are at risk, but that prevention side as well. And we have a really big focus on our young ones coming up. We don't want them to get to this point where we are or we've seen people go through, right? So prevention and screening, detection, and treatment. We have to look at both sides of the story.
Absolutely.
Healthcare knowledge. So that's the big thing. Knowledge is power, no matter what kind of knowledge it is. A lot of us are not knowledgeable about the healthcare system. And once we get knowledgeable about the healthcare system and the options and the resources that are available to us, we're the most powerful person in our healthcare journey.
Let's give a hand to our panel, please. Great job, great job. Thank you. Remember, if you haven't already done so, please fill out you can now begin to do the pre, and now you can start working on your post-survey. Let's bring up Ms. Mildred Pierre. Ms. Pierre is the Regional Director, Community Outreach and Advocacy, and the project lead, the one who set all this up for us. Ms. Pierre.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming. You all are lovely. And I hope you all walked out more excited, more educated, more inclined about lung health than what you came in. Stan and I, well, Stan will probably do this part, but I just want to thank you all. We just have a few acknowledgments and some appreciation that we want to give out. This HEAL program in partnership with Amgen and West Dallas Multipurpose Center has been amazing, but we couldn't have done this without you all being in the room. So thank you all. Ashley Hutto, this is in recognition of your dedication, support, and partnership in advancing lung cancer awareness and education in Dallas. Yes, thank you. Absolutely.
Stand right there.
Stand right here. We'd like to take your picture.
Try again.
Jeffrey Howard, come on over here. Same thing. In recognition of your dedication, support, and partnership in advancing lung cancer awareness and education in Dallas. Thank you. Kelly Wilmore. Yes, this is in recognition of your dedication, support, and partnership in advancing lung cancer. This is all from HEAL Collaborative, by the way. Absolutely. Linda Ramirez. Oh, that's not her. Yeah, oh, she's not here. But she was here yesterday. She's amazing. She leads the veterans program. She allowed HEAL to come into the table and educate, and I think that's how most of you all knew about the program. Thank you. And you could give that to her. I appreciate that. There's a few more. Jacqueline Ward. In recognition to your dedicated support and partnership, this amazing program, this amazing organization, they are a veteran sorority group. We reached out to them, HEAL reached out to them and asked them to come and volunteer without hesitation. They came out, they was like, oh, the veterans will be there, we're there. And they came and they're the women in red.
All right.
Okay. Lakeisha Trim. Yvette Jett. Claudia Jackson. Thank you. Lakeisha Johnson. Thank you so much. And Janie Scenarios. Yes. In recognition of your dedication, support, and partnership in advancing lung cancer awareness and education in Houston. Thank you for all that you do. Yes. The Singleton organization, yes, you do a lot here. You need to be recognized.
All right, let's give all of them a hand. Y'all get a little tighter so we get a picture. Tighten up, they said tighten up just a little bit. One in here, Ashley.
Here we go to 3, 2. I never go to 1. People always blink on 1.
All right, let's give them a hand as we get ready to leave. Let's do 2 things before we get ready to leave. Let's give Dr. Touchton a hand for moderating today. He did an excellent job in getting us in and out. On behalf of HEAL, I think now that you see some of our missions, statement and goals, our health diversity, our equity, access, education, and empowerment for the community. We'd like to thank Amgen again for always helping us with getting the word out. to our community, and our host today, the West Dallas Multipurpose Center, for hosting us today. You got one prereq you have to do before we start our lunch, and that is make sure you complete the surveys and make sure that you sign in before any lunch. All right, make sure you complete your surveys and sign in before lunch. Everybody got that?
Yes.
Other than that, yes ma'am, you got the surveys? You can bring one front to me, yes. Spread the word, empower the people in the community, and we'll make sure that it works for you. Gabrielle, you got anything else? Lisa, you have anything? We'll be around for a little while. Thank you so very much on behalf of Hill and Amgen. Have a great day, and thank you so very much for listening to our presentation and our speakers today. Thank you again. I'll take all your surveys up here.